Coming up on this Friday edition of Daybreak, the two Koreas will today discuss resuming reunions of families separated since the Korean War at the truce village of Panmunjom. Pyongyang, eager to reopen the Mount Geumgang joint tourism project, will likely bring the subject to the table. Korea's multi-purpose satellite, the Arirang 5, successfully enters orbit after blasting off from a launch site in Russia. A special radar attached to the satellite will allow Korea to observe the Earth's surface at night and even under inclement weather conditions. Plus, the international community is calling on the UN to promptly investigate the latest alleged chemical attack by the Syrian government. France says the world should intervene militarily if it is confirmed the Assad regime used chemical agents against civilians. Daybreak begins now.
You're watching Daybreak on Friday, August 23rd, and I'm Choi Yuson here in Seoul. For families still living on opposite sides of the border in South and North Korea, this Friday's talks to resume reunions offers hopes for one last meeting. The two sides will meet on the South Korean side of the truce village of Panmunjom. Our Unification Ministry correspondent Hwang Sung-hee has the details on what to expect from today's dialogue.
North Korea has accepted South Korea's offer to meet at Panmunjom on Friday for Red Cross talks on resuming reunions for families separated since the Korean War. The two had been at odds over the venue for days, with the North pushing to hold the talks at its Mount Geumgang resort and the South wanting to meet on the South Korean side of Panmunjom.
North Korea has agreed to our proposal through the Inter-Korean hotline to hold Red Cross talks on the South Korean side of Panmunjom tomorrow on the resumption of reunions for divided families.
From 10 a.m. on Friday, the three-member delegations from the two sides will discuss the scale and site of the reunions. Some possible locations for the meeting are Mount Geumgang, Seoul, and Pyongyang. South Korea's Unification Ministry said it will put a priority on reuniting as many aging family members as possible, since more than 80% of the 73,000 registered separated family members in the South are over the age of 70. For now, Seoul is aiming to hold the reunions sometime around the middle of next month to coincide with Chuseok, the Korean Thanksgiving holiday. If they do take place, the reunions would be the first such meetings in 3 years. North Korea also made a counterproposal to Seoul's offer to hold talks on reopening the Mount Geumgang resort to South Korean tourists on September 25th. Saying that the issue cannot wait that long, the North proposed to meet at the end of this month or the beginning of September. South Korean tours to the Mount Geumgang resort came to an abrupt end in 2008 after a South Korean tourist was shot dead by a North Korean guard. However, Seoul said it will have to thoroughly review North Korea's latest proposal before giving an answer. Hwang Sung-hee, Arirang News.
In a sign of normalizing operations at the Inter-Korean Kaesong industrial complex, South Korean businessmen with firms in the joint factory zone crossed into North Korea on Thursday in what was their first visit to their facilities in nearly 5 months. More than 250 people, including government officials, crossed the military demarcation line on Thursday morning to spend the day inspecting their factories. They returned to the south at around 5 p.m.
The situation has severely worsened compared to a month ago, so we have to repair the equipment as soon as possible. The North Korean workers want a fast recovery of the industrial complex. We owners wish for this too, since we want to use the same people that used to work for us before they transfer to somewhere else.
Another group of businessmen is scheduled to visit on Friday. And starting Monday, the businessmen will begin maintenance and checkups on their machinery equipment. The visits follow a recent agreement between the two Koreas to restart operations at the factory zone. The president of the International Committee of the Red Cross, Peter Maurer, reportedly met with a North Korean senior official, Kim Yong-nam, in Pyongyang on Thursday. The North's official Korean Central News Agency reports that Maurer gave the official a present that is to be delivered to the leader, Kim Jong-un, but there was no mention of what was discussed. Maurer had earlier expressed hopes to kickstart reunions of families that have been separated since the Korean War. Maurer is scheduled to depart North Korea on Friday and stop over in Beijing for a short stay before coming to Seoul for talks with President Park Geun-hye next week. It took almost 8 years of hard work, and on Thursday night, Korea sent its fourth multi-purpose satellite, the Arirang 5, into orbit. The $210 million satellite blasted off from Yasuni Space Center, some 1,600 kilometers south of Moscow. The space launch vehicle, a converted Soviet-era intercontinental ballistic missile, left under favorable weather conditions at 11:39 p.m. Korea time. About half an hour later, the operational satellite successfully entered orbit. The satellite will be able to observe the planet's surface regardless of the time of day or the weather conditions on Earth. The Korea Aerospace Research Institute, which developed the satellite, says high-resolution radar images will expand monitoring of the peninsula, as well as make valuable contributions in various other areas, such as ocean management, disasters, and land monitoring. While emerging markets have been rattled by questions over the U.S. Fed's plans to taper its massive stimulus program, Korea got a boost in confidence from ratings agency Fitch on Thursday. The global credit appraiser reaffirmed Korea's sovereign rating of AA- with a stable outlook. Fitch cited the country's sound macroeconomic policy in its decision and said the economy has been dealing well with global risk aversion. Fitch has maintained Korea's AA- rating since September of last year, when it was upgraded from A+. Korea's largest automaker, Hyundai Motor, is in a spot of bother as the company's striking union members and management failed to reach a compromise Thursday over wage and benefit issues. Our Hwang Ji-ae reports on how the automaker can expect at least 2 more days of work stoppages.
Officials from Korea's largest car maker, Hyundai Motor, and its union members sat at the negotiating table on Thursday but failed to narrow their differences. The negotiations came after a partial strike of the labor union over unmet demands for higher wages and fringe benefits. The work stoppages have cost the automaker around $75 million in lost output this week alone, and more work stoppages are planned for Friday and Monday, meaning more losses. At a time when the Korean automaker is losing ground even at home to foreign brands because of free trade deals, experts say Hyundai faces major challenges ahead.
The production shortfall caused by the ongoing labor strike in Hyundai's Korean factories in the first half of this year had a negative impact on the company's exports. With another round of strikes taking place in the second half, the automaker will face difficulties in meeting overseas demand.
Hyundai's data shows that it takes around 30 hours to produce one vehicle in domestic factories, whereas in the U.S. it takes half that. The situation is not all that different in Chinese and Czech factories. In the event of a prolonged work stoppage, Hyundai says that it could raise its output in overseas factories that are already rolling out more than 60% of its automobiles.
If the union members continue to lay down their tools, we have to set up long-term countermeasures to tide us over, like operating overseas factories at full capacity.
Hyundai Motor and its labor union have a long history of conflict, with labor disputes becoming almost an annual event in the past 2 decades. Many say how the company deals with these issues could have a major impact on whether the automaker will be able to keep its competitive edge in the global market. Hwang Ji-ae, Arirang News.
If you want the latest news from Korea and around the world,
Return to the negotiations.
President Park Geun-hye plans.
Given the current circumstances.
On your way to work or at home,
Defense Ministry. The legislature will convene a.
tune into Daybreak on Arirang TV.
Prime Minister Shinzo Abe said Tuesday the international community is calling for an immediate investigation into whether the Syrian government used chemical weapons to kill hundreds of its own people earlier this week. UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon said Thursday that the attacks needed to be probed without delay. A top UN official has been dispatched to Syria to seek permission for UN investigators to visit the Damascus suburbs that were allegedly attacked. It remains unclear whether the Syrian government will give the inspectors who are already in Syria access to the sites. France says the international community should intervene if Syria has used chemical weapons. The U.S. is trying to figure out through its own intelligence sources whether chemical weapons were used or not. The Syrian government is adamant the videos posted online were staged. Syrian activists claim more than 1,300 people, including many women and children, were killed in Wednesday's gas attack. Egypt's ex-president Hosni Mubarak has been released from prison and transported by a helicopter to a military hospital in Cairo. The 85-year-old, who led Egypt with an iron fist for 3 decades, is later expected to be put under house arrest. Despite his release, Mubarak still faces charges of corruption and complicity in the killing of demonstrators during the Arab Spring protests that toppled him in 2011. Mubarak's release has dismayed many Islamists who were still protesting in the streets about the overthrow of the country's first democratically elected leader, Mohamed Morsi. They see the move as a sign that the military is rolling back the changes since the uprising. A Japanese daily has reported all water drainage valves of a concrete barrier nearby the leaking tank at the crippled Fukushima nuclear plant were in fact opened when highly radioactive water leaked and drained into the ocean. This according to the Tokyo Shimbun, which then said if all 24 valves had been closed, at least half of the 300 tons of contaminated water would have been contained within the barrier and allowed an earlier discovery of the water leak. A nuclear expert has also told the BBC the crisis at Fukushima is more serious than officials have admitted, as radioactive water is likely leaking throughout the entire plant, and it would be impossible to accurately measure radiation levels. Earlier this week, Japan's nuclear agency said it would bump up the level of crisis 2 notches to 3 on an international scale for radiological releases. China's so-called trial of the century is underway. Disgraced politician Xilai faces charges of bribery, corruption, and abuse of power. During his trial on Thursday, Bo, who stands accused of taking around $4 million in bribes from 2 businessmen, denied the allegations against him. Many expect the former rising political star will be found guilty of all charges and be sentenced to life in prison. Bo's life was turned upside down last year after his wife was found guilty of murdering a business British man named Neil Haywood. Over 1 billion people have a Facebook account, and more than half of them log into the site every day to share their latest updates and check up on what their friends have been up to. But a new study says the more people use Facebook, the worse they actually feel. Our Son Jung-in tells us about the so-called Facebook blues.
Researchers from the University of Michigan recruited 82 young adults to find out whether using Facebook influences people's feelings and satisfaction with life. For 2 weeks, participants answered a number of questionnaires about their emotions and worries 5 times a day to rate their well-being. After the study, researchers concluded people who used Facebook felt less happy than those who didn't. However, those who talked to a friend directly over the phone or had human contact face-to-face felt happier. The lead researcher on the project said the findings show how people's mood fluctuates depending on their Facebook usage because of their feelings of jealousy and resentment when they see photos of fabulous vacations, expensive purchases, and adorable children. And this is not the first time a study has proven this phenomenon. Researchers in Sweden studied over 1,000 people and found users who spend more time on Facebook have lower self-esteem. So next time, instead of liking someone's status update, why not tell them you like them in person? 손정인, Arirang News.
Here's a case of genre mixing in the arts. Imagine the sound of traditional Korean pansori singing and Beethoven sonatas. That's just one of the collaborative pieces taking place at Korea's only piano festival through this Saturday. Our cultural correspondent Park Ji-won takes us there.
This is a part of Jeokbyokga from Korea's storytelling and singing tradition called pansori. However, this pansori performance doesn't just feature the traditional Korean string music instrument called the haegeum, but also 4 pianists playing melodies from Beethoven sonatas. An Iho, who's been singing pansori for nearly 20 years, says he was amazed by the performance.
I think it's very interesting to see how these two totally different music genres, which are the pinnacle of their own spheres, can meet up and match so well.
This collaboration is one of the many concerts being held at this year's piano festival, Korea's only festival dedicated solely to the piano that first started back in 2011. Pianist Park Jong-hoon came out with Thursday's collaboration concert featuring various artists from diverse genres, including dancers and jazz musicians.
I attempted a new approach for this concert. I set up 4 pianos, all placed at innovative locations at the center of the stage, and used visual effects. I wanted something contemporary with a fresh perspective.
During the one-week festival, Korea's most promising young pianists and its most respected share their talents and passion with audiences on center stage. The piano festival continues at Gyeonggi Arts Center through this Saturday. Park Ji-won, Arirang News.
And a good Friday morning to you all as we kick things off in basketball. Now, the 2013 Pro Amateur Competition Finals took place between Korea University and the defending champion Sangmu, the military team. But after 4 quarters, it was Lee Jong-hyun and the Korea University squad that took home the trophy. The 19-year-old freshman dominates the paint, scoring 21 points on 12 boards, helping Korea University beat Sangmu 75-67. And after receiving 74 out of 75 votes, Lee Jong-hyun was also named the tournament's MVP after averaging 22.3 points per game and 14 rebounds per game as well. The 206-centimeter center was also part of the Korean national team during the Asian Basketball Championships. And speaking of the national team, manager Hong Myung-bo, who's over in Europe checking out his overseas players, will be announcing his roster for the upcoming match against Haiti on the 27th. For the first time since taking the managerial position, manager Hong will have his European players available. But with the striker position already crowded, it'll be up to the manager to decide who he'll choose going into the match against Haiti. With the Korean national football team lacking offense in the past few matches, his announcement on the 27th is getting all the more spotlight. And with that said, moving on to some Thursday night's KBO action as the Nexen Heroes beat the NC Dinos 6-1, with Park Byung-ho hitting his 24th home run of the season. Also, the Tusan Bears continued to struggle as they lose to the Samsung Lions 4-2. So with that said, let's take a look at the other 2 games that took place last night, starting off with the LG Twins taking on the SK Wyverns. Of course, shifting over to the game, we go over to the second inning of the game. LG's Yoon Yo-sup RBI single to center field gives LG the early 1-0 lead. But at the bottom of the inning, here's Lee Jae-won sends one deep to right field. This one's a solo shot, and the game's tied 1-1. Third inning, here's Chejung with one man on, deep to center field, back. Gone, a two-run shot as SK takes the lead 3-1. And we go over to the seventh inning, Chung Sang-ho at bat, and swung on and driven to deep left field. A solo shot for Chung Sang-ho as SK now takes the lead 4-1. Eighth inning, more SK offense. Lee Jae-won this time, RBI double to right field, makes it 5-1 before Cho Dong-hwa is going to make this one 6-1 with an RBI single to center field. SK holds on to take this game 6-1 as LG drops for the second straight night. And next up, the two struggling teams in the league, the Hanwha Eagles taking on the Kia Tigers. First inning, Kim Tae-gyun drills an RBI double to left field, scoring Lee Dae-soo for the first run of the game. Next inning, Yang Lee-young-gi at bat. He's going to send this one to deep left field, back. See ya, and it's 2-0 Hanwha. Third inning, Kim Tae-gyun once again, he's going to ground one to the pitcher. He throws to second, and then an errant throw by the second baseman scores another run for the Hanwha Eagles. We're not done yet. Fifth inning, Choi Jin-hang this time an RBI single to left center field makes it 4-0 Hanwha. Sixth inning, Kia does get on board thanks to Na Ji-won, an RBI single to center field cuts the deficit to 4-1 Hanwha. Ninth inning, more from the Kia Tigers. This time, Big Choi Chae-hee-sub sac fly to deep right field, scores another for the Kia Tigers. Before Lee Jong-han, he's going to make this one 4-3 thanks to an RBI single to center. Next batter, though, An Chi-hong, he's going to ground out to short, and the rally's cut short as Hanwha hangs on to take this game 4-3, your final score. And staying in baseball, but over in Japan, where big boy Lee Dae-ho goes yard for the second straight night, hitting his 20th home run of the season against the SoftBank Hawks. Now he will go 2 for 5 in the game as the Oryx Buffaloes take the game 5-1. That's the second straight season where Lee Dae-ho hit at least 20 home runs since coming over to Japan. And now this time over in the majors, where choo-choo train Chu Shin-soo continues to raise his value as he finished off Wednesday night's game against the Arizona Diamondbacks, going 4 for 5 with 3 ribbies, including a leadoff home run in the first inning of the game to start things off. Now he was just short of a cycle as the Cincinnati Reds took this game 10-7. And of course, finishing things off in the UFC, where things aren't looking too good for the Korean zombie Chung Chang-sung after dislocating his shoulder during the championship fight against Jose Aldo during the UFC 163. After getting surgery on his shoulder, his manager believes that he won't be able to return this year, adding that he might be even out for an entire year. Now, the Korean zombie has long been a fan favorite in the UFC as he hopes to return to the ring for another shot at the UFC Featherweight Championship. And that's going to wrap it up for me. This has been SJ. Have a great rest of the day and see you guys again for your sports needs.
Happy Friday! I'm Lee Ji-hyun with your latest weather forecast. Well, here comes our welcome rain. It's not pouring, but it's raining heavily here in Seoul and the surrounding areas this morning, along with thunder and lightning, but it should taper off towards the afternoon. Meanwhile, southern provinces will start to rain in the morning hours so soon and receive all day long. So make sure to have an umbrella for your morning commute, and if possible, try to wear sandals because your socks are likely to get soaked. Well, this weekend is looking not too bad. Daytime highs will be hovering 31 degrees Celsius for most of the regions, and Seoul and surrounding areas should see mostly to partly sunny skies throughout the weekend, but southern provinces will only see the sunshine on Sunday because it's gonna rain all day long tomorrow as well. But we know that's a good news for down south, where regions have been suffering from serious droughts this summer. Well, right now, most of regions are covered with the thick clouds, but more clouds are moving in, so showers can be even heavier at times. But again, it will go away and we'll have sunny skies back by the midday here in the central region. So with that, let's take a look at today's numbers. Now, not so much drop in daytime highs for Seoul with the sunshine back on track this afternoon. The daytime highs will rise to 31 degrees Celsius, that's 88 degrees in Fahrenheit, and Daegu will be much cooler at 30, and Gwangju and Busan even cooler at 29. Now moving over to other places, it looks like Jeju and Mount Geumgang will soar to low 30s, while Daejeon and Dokdo will stay in the late 20s. Now that's all for Korea, and here's the global forecast for viewers around the world. That's all for me at this hour. It's always a little bit more crowded on the rainy commute, so give yourself an extra time for that. Have a great Friday, and big to you, Yusan, in the studio.
Thank you, Jiyeon, and those are the stories we have for you at this hour. Thank you for being with us.